How many here are football players? Congratulations on your victory. Yesterday was very good. Didn't start out too good, but rallied real quick. And St. John's coming up. They only won 98-0, right? So, St. Scholastica. Anyway, thoughts today. The gospel is about denying ourselves, losing our life in order to save it. We did a meditation on that with seminarians, with the incoming seminarians for the year, and I thought about my seminarians. I thought I'd really like to tell them something like, it's going to be awesome, it's going to be just a walk through a rose garden, everything's going to be peachy, there won't be any difficulties, you're really going to love this life. And instead, the Lord provided that gospel, and I had to say to all my new seminarians, 35 coming in, you know what? You're going to have to pick up your cross. You're going to have to deny yourself. You're going to have to come and follow Christ. That's part of the gospel. That's Jesus talking to his disciples at the beginning of their travel time. It's not Jesus saying after 3 years, oh, by the way, forgot to tell you, I got to go die in Jerusalem. No. Jesus is like right up front. If you follow me, there's going to be a cost. I've been meditating on the spiritual life, been a priest almost 20 years, and St. Thomas student before that, did some ministry in between, and I was thinking about all the ways that the Lord in the spiritual life invites us to die. And I realized there is kind of a step-by-step program of sorts. So the first thing, and I experienced this in college myself, we need to die to the world. The world's values, number one in our heart, we need to say, you know what? Being famous, being rich, being the most beautiful, all these kind of things, those are passing. It's passing values. Will we make the kingdom the number one value? And sometimes that requires a certain kind of friendships that we would say, you know what? These folks that I've been hanging out with and partying all day long, I need to find some others that are going to help me be a better man, better woman. It's going to call me on to a higher life. And so when we turn our back from the world, we make God number one. There is a kind of dying. There's a dying to an old life, and sometimes some friends aren't going to accept us. Then there is a choice of the will we have to make with regards to our vocation. And my seminarians are here discerning their call. They're going to be a priest or not. But every one of us have to say in our heart of hearts, Father, I want to do your will. I want to do your will. Your will is going to be the locus and the decider of my journey, my life. If we continue to rely on self and make our own plans without praying, without asking, our memory is here and gone. The memory of us here and gone. But if we say, Father, I'm going to die to my own will, I'm going to do your will. There is a life that comes. Now with every dying, there is a rising. And that's part of the gospel. With every dying, there is a rising. When people get married, and some here, I think, married testify to it, or even the priesthood, say I've been a priest almost 20 years, about a few years in, you fall in love with this person, and you're all excited, and it's very romantic, and it's beautiful, and that's part of it. It's a wonderful season of life. And then about 3 years in, you realize that person's very human. And I'm very human. And you realize how selfish you are. Because you got to die. I got to now live for this wife or this husband and these children. I got to live for these parishioners. My life's not my own. And we realize how selfish we are and how quick we could be to grumble. And the Lord in that time says, are you going to die so that you can rise? Free of self, free of the self-love kind of stuff. The Holy Spirit I have experienced in the last years as a purifying force on the inside. And for me, at a certain point recently, the Holy Spirit experienced His light and love on the inside, kind of turned to fire. It's becoming fire for me. I just shared a little personally, but it's burning away some of the more deeply rooted stuff, and I realize there's pain in fasting. There's pain in denials of various sorts, putting others first in the line at the cafeteria or whatever it is. Little ways to say, I must decrease, and these sins got to go. The deeply rooted sins, pride, envy, greed, sloth, lust, anger, gluttony, all got to go. And when we die to this, there's a rising to power. When we die to our own will, there is a rising to a love affair in God's vocation for us. When we die to sin deeply rooted, there is a rising to power. And the virtuous man and woman are the most powerful. And there's a tremendous freedom with them. I think about, too, the old age, when people start losing health, there's a kind of death to their own mobility and all that they used to be able to do, and a kind of surrender to divine providence. Lord, preparing for heaven. What is God calling you to die to today? When you hear that word, deny yourself. If you want to follow me, you must lose your life. What strikes your heart and mind? I share a story of completion here with St. Faustina. Maria Faustina, she has the devotion to the Divine Mercy. And she grew up in a very pious family. She wanted to join a religious order at age 9, 12. Her mother said, no, you can't do that, you're too young. She finally did get to join at age 19. And she had this miraculous experience. Jesus appeared to her. And he held up his right hand, and in it was a nail. With his left hand, or vice versa, he was touching his heart. Out of the heart, rays of white and red. White symbolizing water and baptism, red symbolizing blood, the Eucharist. And Jesus said to her, this is divine mercy. And I want you to spread that message. The world needs to hear it. She's a contemplative nun. She's supposed to spread the message. She's supposed to have that image painted. Well, she went to her spiritual director, who was a priest, and the spiritual director said to her, why don't you paint the image in your heart? That's what the spiritual director said to her. It's kind of like, I'm not into your image. I'm not sure I believe you. Paint the image in your heart. She had to kind of die in a way to say, even this very spiritual gift, I place this at your feet, Lord. You have to bring it to fruition. 4 years later, she waited 4 years, and finally that priest began to tell the world. Now, John Paul II brought that devotion to the whole world, and John Paul II, taken by the Nazis, was working in a factory in 1931, and that factory was right across the street from the graveyard where Sister Faustina was buried. He was working right across the street. He died, many of you know, on Divine Mercy Sunday. Divine Providence brought it all together. Extraordinary fact. So, today we're beginning a new school year, and the Lord wants us to grow in discipleship, and we need to deny ourselves in some ways to lose our life that we would find it in Him.